Honourable members, I give the floor to the Attorney General and Minister for Economy, Civil Service and Communications, as he has given notice to make a ministerial statement under Standing Order 40. The Minister may speak for up to 20 minutes. After the Minister, I will then invite the Leader of the Opposition or his designate to speak on the statement for no more than 5 minutes. There will also be a response from the Leader of the National Federation Party or his designate to also speak for 5 minutes. There will be no other debate. I now call on the Attorney General and Minister for Economy, Civil Service and Communications, the Honourable Aiyaz Sayed-Khaiyum, to deliver his statement. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to inform Parliament about Fiji's emissions reduction payment agreement between the Fijian government and the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility, or ERPA as we call it. The concept of an ERPA is fairly novel, not just for Fiji, but for the world. So at the outset, please allow me to provide context. In order to achieve a net zero global economy and keep global temperatures well below 1.5 degrees Celsius, 189 countries that are party to the Paris Agreement are required to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, or GHGs, through emissions reduction initiatives. Emissions reduction commitments of each country are articulated in their nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, which are periodically reported to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. In mapping out their paths to a low-carbon future, high GHG emitting countries are running into a dilemma. They are unable to create enough natural carbon sinks to negate their national GHG emissions and achieve their NDC commitments. To address this shortfall, these countries have the option to purchase emission credits from countries like Fiji that are small global emitters with surplus natural carbon sink stocks, such as forests, grasslands, mangroves, and seagrasses. Moreover, both high and low GHG emitting countries also have the option to establish domestic trading schemes to entice resource owners within their borders to preserve and protect natural carbon sinks in exchange for payments according to a predefined carbon price. Mr. Speaker, sir, these forms of international and domestic carbon emissions trading are broadly defined as what we call carbon markets. The practice of carbon trading is widely regarded as a crucial component for addressing the global climate crisis. It helps put a price on GHG emissions and entices government and non-government stakeholders to create a business case for GHG abatement, as well as the potential to support nature-based solutions in climate-vulnerable countries. As a small island developing state that contributes only, Mr. Speaker, sir, 0.006% to global GHG emissions, while being lush with an expansive ecosystem that is well suited for offsetting carbon emissions, Fiji has incredible potential to create far more natural carbon sinks than what we will need to accelerate towards a net zero carbon neutral future. That leaves us with a prospect for great untapped potential to both help the planet and bolster our economy here at home. The market opportunity, Mr. Speaker, sir, is great. Carbon markets are continuing to experience steady growth despite the global economic contraction caused by COVID-19. Right now, there are carbon pricing mechanisms in more than 90 national and subnational jurisdictions around the world. Nationally, these include New Zealand, China, Europe, South Korea, South Africa, Thailand, Japan, and Canada, and subnationally, the United States, and we are glad to see them back into the Paris Agreement family. This creates an opportunity for Fiji to participate in carbon markets to convert our already strong focus on environmental preservation into financial gains that can be used to fund new and additional climate action. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think we can all agree our comparative advantage of being both a low-emitting and nature-rich country creates a strong socio-economic rationale for Fiji to sign the ERPA with the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility. Mr. Speaker, sir, the ERPA was signed on Wednesday, 27 January 2021 this year as a 5-year carbon trade contract between the Fijian government on behalf of all Fijians and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development as trustee of the Carbon Fund owned by the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility. Fiji is one of 19 countries only in the world accepted for funding under the Carbon Fund portfolio, and this is the first and only Pacific Island country to enter into the carbon trade under this framework. While we are just getting started with carbon trading, the hard work that went in behind the scenes to make this possible has been going for some time, and I think it's only appropriate, apart from the Minister and the PS of Forest and Fisheries, PS Economy, the Head of Climate Change, but to mention 4 individuals specifically who were involved in the technical work, which is the Conservator of Forest, Sanjana Lal, Eli Tulele, who is the Program Team Leader of RED Plus, and Jeanette Mani and Diptika Chand, who are the Mitigation Officers in the Climate Change Office. These are the core technical people. The ERPA is a culmination of over a decade of work that began in 2009, and over the years, with funding and technical support of the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility managed by the World Bank, preparatory work ensued in readiness for the implementation of the ERPA. Mr. Speaker, sir, humanity has long exploited natural resources at the expense of development and released GHG emissions to a level that has suffocated the Earth's fragile biosphere. The ERPA elevates the importance of trees and forests as a natural resource in sustaining life and offers a tangible solution through designating forests as sinks for sequestering greenhouse gases and provides a system for verifying quantifiable measures of the reducing level of GHG emissions over the next 5 years. The ERPA has identified an area of 37,282 hectares within 20 districts spread over the 3 islands of Vitilevu, Vanuatu, and Taveuni, in which the emission reduction activities will be conducted. These activities include the establishment of forests on degraded land, sustainable management of designated timber production forests, the total protection of intact existing natural forests, the incorporation of trees into farming and agricultural systems, and the promotion of forest-based livelihood ventures as an alternative to forest extraction such as ecotourism, beekeeping, agroforestry, and the establishment of nurseries for high-valued native species of forests. Corporate bodies such as the Fiji Pine Group of Companies and the Fiji Hardwood Corporation Limited are already supporting the ERPA. They have pledged to contribute to the establishment of forests as designated carbon sinks within their respective programs and as their corporate responsibility to reduce emissions and help Fiji combat climate change. Mr. Speaker, sir, the contracted volume of carbon dioxide emissions that Fiji is expected to sequester from this forest activities over the next 5 years is 2.5 million tons, which upon verification will yield a result-based payment of US $12.5 million over the span of 5 years, divided into 3 tranches, which are as follows, Mr. Speaker, sir. From July 11, 2019 to December 31, 2020, 300,000 units, January 2021, December 31, 2022, 1 million units. January 2023 to December 31, 2024 is 1.2 million units. The total cost of commitments under the ERPA is US $31.2 million, of which the Fijian government's contribution over the 5 years is US $13.5 million and will be absorbed into the usual annual work program of the Ministry of Forestry and the Ministry of Agriculture. A further US $8.82 million of the remaining amount is associated to costs for corporate bodies involved in forest establishment and the cost of adopting sustainable harvesting regimes. The balance of US $8.89 million will be sourced externally from multilateral climate funds, such as the Green Climate Fund, Adaptation Fund, and the Global Environment Facility. By leveraging Fiji's usual expenditure in the forestry and agricultural sector to unlock additional funding of US $12.5 million, ERPA encourages integration and coordination throughout the various government structures and tiers of decision-making, promotes inclusivity and the empowerment of resource owners and often marginalized communities through livelihood ventures and employment opportunities. Mr. Speaker said it is important to note that the US $12.5 million that will be generated from this initiative will be passed down to resource owners as incentive payments through a benefits sharing plan developed by the Fijian government in collaboration with the World Bank. Moreover, the rights of property owners will be protected under the feedback grievance redress mechanism, the safeguard information system, and a robust monitoring, reporting, and verification system which will be jointly administered by the Ministry of Forestry, Itauke Lands Trust Board, the Provincial Councils, Ministry of Agriculture, and Ministry of Economy. From a policy perspective, Mr. Speaker, ERPA further supports Fiji's commitment to various agreements, treaties, and conventions, particularly the commitment to reduce Fiji's GHG emissions by 30% by 2030 and the planting of 30 million trees in the next 10 years. At the end of the 5-year ERPA program, Mr. Speaker, Fiji will have established a reputable monitoring, reporting, and verification system that will have been rigorously tested in preparation for future carbon trade and competitive carbon markets, allowing us to build on our momentum and continue to tap into new carbon trading opportunities. Mr. Speaker, the Fijian government is cognizant of the fact that carbon markets require a robust, enabling environment to ensure market forces, namely the supply and demand of carbon credits. They must interact seamlessly. In this regard, we are currently conducting, as we all know, national consultations on the draft climate change bill, which will create the legislative framework for creating carbon markets in Fiji and enabling local resource owners to access foreign carbon markets through the Fijian government's trading setup. In particular, the draft climate change bill establishes carbon sequestration property rights and defines it as the exclusive and distinct legal right to carbon sequestration and carbon stocks. The draft bill sets out the parameters for the assignment of such property rights by defining them as the exclusive and distinct legal right to carbon sequestration and carbon stocks. The carbon sequestration property right shall be attached to an eligible land until its term is concluded or renewed. Mr. Speaker, we are pleased to highlight that once a resource owner registers and is assigned carbon sequestration property right by the Registrar of Titles, it is recognized as an official instrument of title that is recognized under the Personal Property Securities Act. It essentially gives additional asset value to the land it is assigned. So even people who may lease it can actually have those properties assigned to them. Such legal recognition creates the foundation for trading carbon sequestration property rights in the carbon market. In summary, the draft climate change bill will enable the Fijian government to work with resource owners to assign carbon sequestration property rights and transfer them to the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility for a period of 5 years in exchange for emission reduction results-based payments. The Forest Bill 2020, which is a revised and improved version of the Forest Bill 2016, is currently under consultation and will also supplement and support the draft climate change bill, providing the framework to facilitate the implementation of ERPA. Mr. Speaker, as nations of the world work towards creating a carbon-neutral future by 2050, which Fiji has already given a commitment to, carbon markets are one of the many tools that will be leveraged to tackle global climate emergency, which, as science tells us, is a direct result of increased greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Fiji, through the support of the World Bank and the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility, now has the opportunity to participate in international carbon markets, which goes beyond the existing national REDD+ initiative. It is important to note, Mr. Speaker, that at the end of the 5-year ERPA, Fiji will have the option to have 95% of its 2.5 million tons of emission reduction units transferred back by the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility. This again can be used by Fiji towards our NDC to achieve our 2050 net zero carbon reduction targets, and indeed we can trade on it again. While the carbon credits are currently only being quantified for the forestry sector, this is just the start. Through this prestigious program, Fiji will gain global recognition as Forest Carbon Partnership Facility is playing a catalyzing role in connecting countries with private sector investments, which could potentially unlock opportunities for other sectors, as well as, for example, the blue carbon ecosystems, something that obviously has great potential for a big ocean state like ours. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, sir, Fiji has the unique opportunity for capacity building for monitoring, reporting and verification, access to the central registry housed in the World Bank, certification of the carbon credits by the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility, and more importantly, leveraging much bigger future financing incentives in the voluntary markets around the world. If Fiji successfully implements the emission reduction program and obtains payments, its carbon crediting system will demonstrate world-leading field-tested processes and systems to support future carbon trading. Mr. Speaker, sir, we cannot underestimate nor overstate the potential here. Mr. Speaker, sir, as all countries are now required to reduce emissions as much as possible under the Paris Agreement, carbon markets will evolve towards financing climate projects that truly drive the zero carbon emission and the transition to it. The draft climate change bill thus creates an enabling environment for carbon market initiatives in Fiji by defining carbon sequestration property rights, encouraging the formulation of robust REDD+ and blue carbon policies, mandating the development of emissions reduction methodologies, as well as providing guidance on voluntary and compliance-based market mechanisms. The signing of the ERPA could help garner financial support to operationalize these aspects of the climate change bill once it is enacted by Parliament. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Fijian government has laid the groundwork, and we are excited to see where this innovative new initiative takes us in the months and years ahead. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
I thank the Attorney General and Minister for Economy for his ministerial statement. I now give the floor to the Leader of the Opposition. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you.